The next morning, Princess Lyra stood in the main courtyard of the royal palace, holding a human rifle in her 4 hands. The weapon felt strange and heavy compared to the energy weapon she was used to. Danny Brooks stood beside her, patiently, explaining how to hold it properly. "Remember, Princess, the rifle has a kick when you fire it," Danny said. "The explosion that sends the bullet forward also pushes the gun backward. You need to brace yourself." Around them, 50 Zephyrian soldiers watched nervously. These were elite palace guards who had volunteered to learn human weapons. Many of them looked embarrassed to be training with what they considered primitive technology. "This is ridiculous," muttered Captain Zorthek, one of the palace guard officers. "We are the finest warriors in the galaxy, and now we're learning to use Stone Age weapons." Danny heard him and walked over. "Captain, can I ask you something? How many battles have you won against the Vorthek?" Captain Zorthek's blue skin darkened with anger. "That is not the point. We are civilized beings, not barbarians who throw rocks at our enemies." "These aren't rocks," Danny said calmly. He held up a bullet. "This is a precisely engineered piece of metal designed to penetrate armor and stop an enemy. Your people gave up kinetic weapons because you thought they were primitive. But sometimes primitive works better than advanced." Princess Lyra raised her rifle and aimed at a target 50 meters away. The target was a piece of Vortex armor mounted on a stand. She took a deep breath and squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired with a loud bang. The bullet hit the armor and punched straight through it. Princess Lyra stumbled backward from the recoil, but she kept her balance. The Zephyrian soldiers stared in amazement. "I hit it," Princess Lyra said, sounding surprised. "The bullet went through the armor just like yesterday." Danny smiled. "Good shot, Princess. Now try again, but this time don't close your eyes when you pull the trigger." On the other side of the courtyard, Captain Jake Morrison was meeting with Zephyrian military leaders. General Keffer had spread out holographic maps showing the current war situation. The news was not good. "The Vorthek are advancing on 3 fronts, General Keffer explained. "They've taken the mining colonies on the outer rim, and now they're moving toward our industrial worlds. We estimate they'll reach the core systems within 2 weeks." Commander Lisa Hayes studied the maps. "How many ships do they have?" "At least 300 that we've seen," said Colonel Nimra. "But they keep bringing more from deep space. We think they're calling in reinforcements." Jake frowned. 300 ships. We only have 1 ship and 40 Marines." "Captain, we have over 2 million soldiers," General Keffer said. "If your weapons can penetrate Vorthek armor, we can arm our troops with them." "That's the problem," Jake said. "We don't have 2 million rifles. We have maybe 500 ballistic weapons on the Ranger, and not nearly enough ammunition for a full-scale war." Dr. Rachel Stone, who had been quietly studying Zephyrian technology reports, looked up from her tablet. "Actually, Captain, I think I might have a solution. The Zephyrians have incredible manufacturing technology. If we can show them how to make bullets and gunpowder, they could produce weapons much faster than we ever could." Colonel Nimmer looked interested. "Our fabrication systems can produce almost anything if we have the proper specifications. But we would need to understand how your weapons work." Chief Engineer Tony Martinez stepped forward. "The basic principles are simple. Gunpowder explodes, drives a bullet down a barrel, and the bullet flies toward the target. The hard part is getting the measurements exactly right." Back in the courtyard, the training was going better than expected. The Zephyrians had 4 arms instead of 2, which gave them excellent stability when holding rifles. Their reflexes were also much faster than human reflexes. After 2 hours of practice, most of them were hitting targets consistently. Princess Lyra was proven to be a natural shooter. She had hit the target 20 times out of 25 shots, which was better than most human soldiers on their first day. Danny was impressed. "Princess, you're a natural," he said. "Your people might be even better at this than humans are." "It's strange," Princess Lyra said, examining her rifle. This weapon is so simple compared to our energy guns. No power cells, no focusing crystals, no energy converters, just metal and chemical explosives. Simple can be good, Danny said. Simple means fewer things can break. Simple means you can use it in any environment. Your energy weapons probably don't work well in extreme cold or heat, right? Princess Lyra nodded. They lose efficiency in temperature extremes, and they're useless if their power supply is damaged. This rifle will work in a blizzard underwater, or in the middle of a desert, Danny said. As long as you have bullets, you can fight. Major Velton approached them. He was carrying a rifle and looked excited. Sergeant Brooks, I've been thinking about tactics. If these weapons can penetrate Vorthic armor, we need to change how we fight. What do you mean? Danny asked. We've been fighting the Vorthic in open battle, ship against ship. But if we can hurt them with small arms, we could use guerrilla tactics. Hit and run attacks. Ambush. Danny grinned. Now you're thinking like a human. We've been fighting guerrilla wars for thousands of years. I can teach you everything I know about ambush tactics. Meanwhile, in the Palace Research Laboratory, Dr. Stone was working with Zephyrian engineers to design a bullet manufacturing system. The aliens were amazed by how simple human ammunition was. You use lead for the projectile? Asked Engineer Fellinor. But lead is so soft. Why not use something harder? Lead is dense and heavy, Dr. Stone explained. It carries a lot of kinetic energy, and it's soft enough to deform when it hits a target, which creates more damage. Fascinating, said Engineer Fellinor. And the explosive powder is made from simple chemicals? Saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur for basic gunpowder, Dr. Stone said. Though we have more advanced propellants now, the important thing is that all these materials are easy to find and manufacture. Engineer Fellinor was taking notes on a holographic display. With our fabrication systems, we could produce thousands of bullets per hour. But we'll need to build new production facilities. How long would that take? Dr. Stone asked. If we work around the clock, maybe 3 days to set up basic production, a week for full-scale manufacturing. Dr. Stone felt a surge of hope. 3 days. We might actually be able to arm your entire military. That evening, Princess Lyra called. A meeting of the War Council. All the top Zephyrian military leaders were there, along with the human officers. The princess looked tired but determined. My friends, she began, today we learned something important. The weapons we thought were primitive might be the key to defeating the Vorthic. But we need to act quickly. General Keffer spoke up. Princess, our scouts report that Vorthic will reach the Vextar system within 5 days. That's our main industrial center. If we lose it, we lose the war. Then we make our stand at Vextar, Princess Lyra said. We'll use the time to arm as many soldiers as possible with human weapons. Jake looked concerned. Princess, 5 days isn't much time to train an army. Your soldiers are good, but learning to use ballistic weapons effectively takes practice. Then we'll have to learn. Fast, Princess Lyra said firmly. Sergeant Brooks, I want you to train our best officers. They can then train their soldiers. We'll spread the knowledge as quickly as possible. Danny nodded. I can do that. But Princess, there's something else you need to know. These weapons are only as good as the soldiers using them. Your people have been fighting with energy weapons for thousands of years. They're used to point and shoot. Ballistic weapons require different tactics. What kind of tactics? Asked Colonel Nimra. Aimed fire instead of suppressive fire, Danny explained. Conservation of ammunition, use of cover and concealment. And most importantly, patience. Energy weapons can fire continuously as long as they have power. Bullets run out. Princess Lyra listened carefully. Sergeant, you'll have whatever resources you need. Teachers, training facilities, anything. Thank you, Princess. We'll need shooting ranges, lots of practice ammunition, and targets that simulate Vorthic armor. Major Velton raised his hand. What about combined tactics? Using both energy weapons and ballistic weapons together? Jake smiled. That's exactly what I was thinking. Energy weapons to blind their sensors and disrupt their formations. Ballistic weapons to deliver the killing shots. Princess Lyra stood up. Then it's decided. We have 5 days to prepare for the most important battle in our history. We'll combine human tactics with Zephyrian technology, and we'll show the Vorthic that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As the meeting ended, Princess Lyra walked out onto the palace balcony. The city sparkled below her, and she could see the stars above. Somewhere out there, the Vorthic were coming. But for the first time since the war began, she felt ready to fight them. She looked down at the rifle in her hands. Such a simple weapon, but it might save her entire world. The humans had taught her something important today. Advanced technology wasn't always better technology. Sometimes the answer to a complex problem was surprisingly simple. 4 days later, the Hughes Ranger dropped out of hyperspace near Zephyr Prime. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking at the alien world through the main viewer. The planet was beautiful, covered in crystal cities that sparkled like diamonds in the light of the system's twin suns. But even from space, he could see the black smoke rising from burning areas on the surface. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the planet," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. "It's Princess Lyra again. Put her through." The princess appeared on the screen, and Jake could see that she looked much worse than before. Her pale blue skin was darker, and her silver eyes had lost their glow. She was wearing armor now instead of her royal robes. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming," she said. "The situation has gotten worse. The Vorthic attacked 2 more colonies yesterday. They're moving toward our home world." Jake nodded grimly. "We're here to help, Princess. Can you send us information about these Vorthic? We need to know what we're fighting." "I'm transmitting all our data now," Princess Lyra said. "But Captain, you should know that many of my people do not believe humans can help us. They think your weapons are too primitive." In the weapons bay, Danny Brooks was checking his equipment when the data came through. He looked at the images of the Vorthic on his tablet and whistled softly. The creatures were nightmares made real. They looked like giant insects covered in black metal armor, but with glowing red eyes and claws that could cut through steel. "Hey, Tony," Danny called to Chief Engineer Tony Martinez, who was nearby. "Come look at this." Tony walked over and looked at the tablet. His face went pale. "Those things are huge. Look at the size comparison. They're 8 feet tall and covered in armor that looks like it's alive." Danny pointed to a section of the report. "Says here that their armor changes color and thickness during battle. It learns from each attack and makes itself stronger." Dr. Rachel Stone joined them, reading over Danny's shoulder. "This is fascinating. The Vorthic appear to be biomechanical. Part living creature, part machine. Their armor is actually a living organism that can adapt to different types of energy." "What about bullets?" Danny asked. Dr. Stone read more of the report. "The Zephyrians never tested kinetic weapons against them. They haven't used projectile weapons in thousands of years. Look at this. They describe human weapons as ancient chemical-propelled metal fragments." Danny laughed. "Ancient metal fragments. That's one way to describe a bullet." Up on the bridge, Commander Lisa Hayes was studying the tactical reports. She was the ship's military advisor and had fought in 3 wars. What she saw in the Zephyrian data worried her. "Captain, the Vorthic fight in swarms. They overwhelm their enemies with numbers and adapt to their weapons during battle. The Zephyrians have been fighting them for months, and the creatures have learned to counter every energy weapon they have." Jake frowned. "What's their weakness?" "Unknown," Lisa said. "The Zephyrians haven't found one yet. But there's something interesting here. The Vorthic seem to focus on energy signatures. They attack energy weapon installations first, and they ignore anything that doesn't emit energy." "Like our ballistic weapons," Jake said with understanding. "Exactly. Our guns don't emit energy the way laser or plasma weapons do. The Vorthik might not even recognize them as weapons. An hour later, the UES Ranger was in orbit around Zephyria Prime. A shuttle from the planet docked with the ship, and Princess Lyra came aboard with a small group of her advisors. Jake met them in the main docking bay. The princess was smaller than Jake had expected, about the same height as a human woman. But she moved with the grace of a trained warrior. Her advisors were all tall, thin aliens with the same pale blue skin and silver eyes. "Welcome aboard the Ranger, Princess," Jake said. "Thank you, Captain. These are my military advisors, General Keffer, Colonel Nimra, and Major Veltan." The alien officers looked around the docking bay with obvious disappointment. Jake could see them staring at the human weapons mounted on the walls. To them, the rifles and machine guns probably looked like museum pieces. "Princess, we need to see these Vorthik for ourselves," Jake said. "Do you have any prisoners or wreckage we can examine?" General Keffer spoke up. His voice was deep and reminded Jake of distant thunder. "We have some wreckage from a destroyed Vorthik fighter. It's in our research facility on the planet's surface." "Good. I want to bring my weapons specialist down to look at it." Princess Lyra nodded. "Of course. But Captain, I must warn you. My people are desperate, but they don't understand how your primitive weapons could help us." Danny Brooks had been standing quietly near the back of the group. Now he stepped forward. "Princess, may I ask you something?" She looked at him curiously. "Yes? When your people stopped using kinetic weapons, did you stop learning about them too?" Princess Lyra seemed confused by the question. "Of course. Why? Would we study obsolete technology?" Danny smiled. "Because sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Your people have been fighting energy weapons for so long that you've forgotten that there are other ways to hurt somebody." Colonel Nimra made a sound that might have been laughter. "Human, your metal fragments cannot penetrate modern armor. Our weapons fire concentrated energy that can melt through 10 feet of steel." "That's impressive," Danny said politely. "But can your armor stop a bullet moving at 4,000 feet per second?" "What is a bullet?" Major Veltan asked. Danny pulled out his sidearm and removed a cartridge from the magazine. He held it up so the aliens could see it. "This is a bullet. It's a piece of metal designed to punch through things. We fire it using a chemical explosion that gives it incredible speed." The alien stared at the small metal object in Danny's hand. Princess Lyra picked it up and examined it carefully. "This tiny thing is your weapon?" "Part of it," Danny said. "The gun fires it, and the bullet does the damage. No energy signature, no fancy technology. Just a chunk of metal moving really fast." General Keffer looked skeptical. "How could something so simple be effective?" Dr. Rachel Stone stepped forward. "General, may I explain something about kinetic energy? When you accelerate a mass to high velocity, it carries enormous destructive force. A bullet doesn't need to be big to be deadly." "But our armor is designed to stop projectiles, Colonel," Nimra said. "Armor from 3,000 years ago," Danny pointed out. "When your people stopped using bullets, they stopped improving armor against bullets. I'm betting your modern armor is great against energy weapons, but terrible against old-fashioned projectiles." Princess Lyra was still holding the bullet. "Captain Morrison, are you saying that this small piece of metal could penetrate Vorthik armor?" "We won't know until we try," Jake said. "But if their armor is designed to adapt to energy weapons, it might not know how to handle kinetic energy." An hour later, they were on the planet's surface at a Zephyrian research facility. The building was made of the same crystal material as the rest of the city, but it was surrounded by energy shields and guard towers. Inside, Zephyrian scientists were studying pieces of destroyed Vorthik equipment. Dr. Stone and Danny examined a piece of Vorthik armor that was about the size of a dinner plate. It was black and had a strange organic texture that seemed to shift when they weren't looking directly at it. "This is incredible," Dr. Stone said. "The armor is definitely alive. Look at these cellular structures. It's like biological metal." Danny tapped the armor with his finger. It's about an inch thick. Hard, but not impossibly hard. I think a good armor-piercing round could punch right through it. Princess Lyra watched as Danny set up a small testing apparatus. He loaded a single bullet into a test rifle and aimed it at the armor sample. The Zephyrian scientists gathered around to watch. "Stand back," Danny said. He fired. The bullet struck the armor and went completely through it, leaving a neat hole in the center. The armor sample twitched once and then went still. The room was silent. Princess Lyra stared at the hole in the armor, her silver eyes wide with shock. The Zephyrian scientists looked at each other in amazement. "It went through," Princess Lyra whispered. "Your primitive bullet went right through Vorthic armor." Danny picked up the armor sample and examined the hole. The armor didn't even try to adapt. It's like it didn't recognize the bullet as a threat. Dr. Stone was taking readings with her scanner. The armor's adaptive systems are designed to counter energy attacks. They analyze the frequency and power of energy weapons and then adjust to resist them. But a bullet is just kinetic force. There's nothing for the armor to analyze. General Kefra looked stunned. "Are you saying that your ancient weapons are effective against an enemy that has defeated our most advanced technology?" Jake nodded. "That's exactly what we're saying. Sometimes the solution to a complex problem is surprisingly simple." Princes. Lyra was still staring at the hole in the armor. For the first time since the war began, she felt real hope. These primitive humans and their simple weapons might actually be able to save her world. The red lights were flashing all over the bridge of the UES Ranger. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair watching the strange signals on the main screen. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he did not care. Something big was happening. "Captain, we're getting another transmission from the Zephyrian Empire," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her position at the communications desk. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "It's the same signal we picked up yesterday, but much stronger now." Jake stood up and walked to Amy's station. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as proud warriors with beautiful crystal, cities, and powerful energy weapons. They never asked anyone for help. If they were calling Earth, something was very wrong. "Put it through," Jake said. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. The being had pale blue skin and large silver eyes. Her features were elegant, almost like a human woman, but with a strange glow that seemed to come from within. She wore a crown made of what looked like pure light. "I am Princess Lyra Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire," she said. Her voice was musical, but Jake could hear the fear in it. "I speak for my father, Emperor Zethrin, and our people. We need your help." Jake had seen many things in his 20 years with the Earth Defense Force, but he had never seen a Zephyrian. Princes asked humans for help. The Zephyrians thought they were better than everyone else. They had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. "Princes, this is Captain Morrison of the UES Ranger." "What kind of help do you need?" The princess looked tired. Her silver eyes seemed to dim as she spoke. "3 of our outer colonies have been destroyed. The enemy came from deep space. They are unlike anything we have ever fought before." Down in the weapons bay, Sergeant Danny Brooks was cleaning his rifle when he heard the princess's voice over the ship's speakers. Danny was the best marksman on the Ranger, maybe the best in the whole Earth Defense Force. He had grown up hunting deer in the mountains of Colorado, and his father had taught him to shoot when he was just 8 years old. Danny stopped cleaning his rifle and listened. The princess was talking about an enemy that could not be stopped. Her people had tried everything, but nothing worked. "They call themselves the Vorthic Swarm," Princess Lyra continued. "They are part machine, part living creature. Our energy weapons do nothing to them. They seem to learn from each attack and grow stronger." Jake frowned. The Zephyrians had the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy. Their plasma cannons could cut through the hull of a battleship like it was paper. If those weapons were useless, what could Earth do? "Princess, our weapons are much more basic than yours. If your energy weapons cannot stop them, I don't see how we can help." Princess Lyra's image flickered on the screen. "Captain Morrison, we have studied your people. Your military still uses what you call ballistic weapons. Projectiles fired by chemical explosions. We stopped using such primitive methods 3,000 years ago." In the weapons bay, Danny smiled. "Primitive methods. That's what aliens always said about human weapons. They thought throwing metal bullets at high speed was old-fashioned, but Danny knew something they didn't. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways." "The Vorthic armor adapts to energy frequencies," the princess went on. "It learns from plasma, lasers, and particle beams. But we have never tested it against solid projectiles. Your primitive weapons might be exactly what we need." Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was staring at the screen in amazement. Lieutenant Amy Carter was, shaking her head slowly. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez had stopped working on his console and was listening carefully. "Princess, are you saying that our bullets might work where your advanced weapons failed?" Jake asked. "I do not know," Princess Lyra admitted. "But 3 billion of my people are dead, and more colonies are being attacked every day. We are desperate, Captain Morrison. Will you help us?" Jake thought about it. The Zephyrians had always looked down on humans. They thought Earth was a backward planet full of primitive warriors. But now they needed those primitive warriors to save them. "We'll help," Jake said. "But you need to understand something, Princess. If we're going to fight these Vorthic, we do it our way. No energy weapons, no fancy technology. Just human tactics and human weapons." Princess Lyra nodded quickly. "Anything, Captain. My people are dying. Give us the coordinates of your home world. We'll be there in 4 days." After the transmission ended, Jake called a meeting in the main conference room. All the senior officers gathered around the table. Danny Brooks was there too, representing the Marine Detachment. "All right, people," Jake began. "We're going to war with an enemy that has defeated one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They want us to use our ballistic weapons against creatures that adapt to energy attacks." Dr. Rachel Stone, the ship's science officer, spoke up. "Captain, if the Vorthic can adapt to energy weapons, it means they have some kind of learning system in their armor. Probably biological or biomechanical. What does that mean for us?" asked Lieutenant Amy Carter. Danny Brooks leaned forward. "It means they've never fought anything like us before. Every other species in the galaxy uses energy weapons. We're probably the only ones still shooting bullets." Chief Engineer Tony Martinez scratched his head. "Are we really going to try to save an alien empire with rifles and pistols?" "Not just rifles and pistols," Danny said with a grin. "We've got machine guns, sniper rifles, shotguns, and enough ammunition to fight a war. The Zephyrians evolved past kinetic weapons. They probably don't even remember how to make a bullet." Jake nodded. Danny's right. While other species were developing energy weapons, we kept improving our ballistic systems. We've got armor-piercing rounds, explosive bullets, and projectiles that can punch through a foot of steel. Dr. Stone looked worried. "But Captain, we're talking about going up against an enemy that has destroyed 3 Zephyrian colonies. These Vorthic must be incredibly dangerous." "They are," Jake agreed. "But they're used to fighting energy weapons. They've probably never seen a machine gun bullet coming at them at 3,000 feet per second." Danny stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars looked peaceful, but somewhere out there, an alien princess was waiting for help from humans she thought were primitive. "Captain," Danny said, "I've been thinking about what the princess said. The Vorthic adapt to energy attacks. But you can't adapt to a chunk of metal moving fast enough to punch through your armor. Physics is physics, no matter what planet you're from." Jake smiled. "Exactly. Set course for Zephyria Prime, Amy. Let's go show these aliens what human warfare looks like." As the UE's Ranger changed course towards Zephyrian space, Princess Lyra was in her palace on the Crystal World, staring out at the stars. She had just asked for help from a species her people considered barely civilized. But as she watched her world's 3 moons rise over the crystal spires of the capital city, she wondered if primitive humans might be exactly what her advanced civilization needed in 4 days. She would find out if human bullets could save her world where Zephyrian energy weapons had failed. For the first time in weeks, Princess Lyra felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Carrying Dr. Kef back to the cabin was much harder than Jake had expected. The stretcher was heavy, and they had to move very slowly to avoid hurting the injured Villani's broken leg. Every few minutes, they had to stop and rest. "I'm sorry to be such trouble," Dr. Keth said as they paused beside the river to catch their breath. "You're not trouble," Jake said, wiping sweat from his face. "Anyone would need help with a broken leg." Dr. Keth watched Jake carefully. The human was working very hard to help him, even though they had just met. This was very different from what he had been told about humans. "Jake," Dr. Keth said, "why are you doing this for me? I am not your species." Jake took a drink of water and looked at the injured alien. "Because it's the right thing to do. If you were hurt and I didn't help you, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. But surely you have more important things to do," Dr. Kef said. "What could be more important than helping someone who needs it?" Jake asked. Dr. Kef had no answer for that. In all the stories he had heard about humans, none of them mentioned humans helping other species. The climb back up the valley wall was the most difficult part. Jake had to find a way to get the stretcher up the steep, rocky path without dropping Dr. Kef or causing him more pain. Zara helped as much as she could, but she was not strong enough to carry much weight. "We need to tie the stretcher to me," Jake said, studying the cliff face. "That way I can use my hands to climb, and the rope will hold the stretcher." "Is that safe?" Zara asked. "It's the only way," Jake said. "Unless you have a better idea." They used Jake's rope to attach the stretcher to his back and shoulders. Jake tested the knots carefully to make sure they would hold. Dr. Kef looked nervous about being tied to a human, but he didn't have any choice. "Hold on tight," Jake told Dr. Kef. "This is going to be bumpy." Jake began climbing the steep path, moving very slowly and carefully. The extra weight made it much harder, and several times he had to stop and rest. His muscles ached, and his hands were getting cut from gripping the rough rocks. "Are you okay, Jake?" Zara asked from behind him. "I'm fine," Jake said, though he was breathing heavily. "Just need to take it one step at a time." It took them almost 3 hours to reach the top of the valley. When they finally made it, Jake collapsed on the ground, exhausted. The stretcher had rubbed against his back and shoulders, leaving painful marks. "You're hurt," Zara said, looking at the cuts on Jake's hands and the bruises on his shoulders. "It's nothing serious," Jake said. Dr. Keth needed to get out of that valley, and this was the only way. Dr. Keth looked at Jake with amazement. "You injured yourself to help me. A few cuts and bruises will heal," Jake said. "Your broken leg is much more serious." They rested for a while, then continued toward Jake's cabin. The forest path was easier than the valley climb, but Jake was tired, and the stretcher seemed to get heavier with each step. When they were about halfway to the Tully cabin, they heard a low growling sound from the bushes ahead of them. Jake immediately stopped and motioned for Zara to be quiet. "What is it?" Dr. Keth whispered. "Shadowcat," Jake said quietly. "It must smell blood from our injuries." The growling got louder, and they could see yellow eyes watching them from the shadows between the trees. The Shadowcat was a sleek predator with dark fur and 6 powerful legs. It was clearly deciding whether to attack them. "What do we do?" Zara asked, her voice shaking with fear. Jake slowly reached for his knife. "Stay behind me. Don't run, or it will chase you." The Shadowcat stepped out of the bush, showing its sharp teeth and claws. It was bigger than Jake had expected, almost the size of a large dog. It crouched low, Preparing to attack, Jake stood between the Shadow Cat and his companions, holding his knife ready. "Get back," he said firmly to the animal. "We don't want trouble." The Shadow Cat snarled and took a step closer. It was clearly hungry and saw them as easy prey. Jake picked up a large stick with his free hand. "I said get back." The Shadow Cat suddenly leaped forward, its claws extended. Jake dodged to the side and swung the stick, hitting the animal in the ribs. The Shadow Cat rolled and came up snarling, but now it was more cautious. "Stay away from them," Jake shouted, waving the stick and knife. "Find easier prey." The Shadow Cat circled around, looking for an opening to attack. Jake kept himself between the predator and his friends, turning to face the animal wherever it went. Dr. Keth watched from the stretcher, amazed. Jake was risking his life to protect two aliens he barely knew. This was completely different from every story Dr. Keth had ever heard about humans. The Shadow Cat made another attack, this time trying to get around Jake to reach Zara. Jake jumped in front of it and slashed with his knife, cutting the animal's front leg. The Shadow Cat yowled in pain and backed away. "That's right," Jake said, breathing hard. "We're not easy prey. Go find something else to hunt." The Shadow Cat looked at them for a long moment, then turned and disappeared back into the forest. It had decided that they were too much trouble. Jake stood still for several minutes, listening to make sure the animal was really gone. Finally, he put away his knife and picked up the stretcher again. "Is it safe now?" Zara asked. "I think so," Jake said. "But let's keep moving. That cat might come back if it gets hungry enough." They continued toward the cabin, all of them shaken by the encounter. Dr. Keth was especially quiet, thinking about what he had just seen. "Jake," Dr. Keth said finally, "you could have been killed protecting us." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I couldn't let that animal hurt you." "Why?" Dr. Keth asked. "We are not your people. We are not even your species." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Because you're people. You can think and feel and care about others, just like humans can. That makes you worth protecting." Dr. Keth had never heard a human talk this way. According to the stories, humans only cared about other humans. They were supposed to see all other species as enemies or food. When they finally reached Jake's cabin, the sun was setting. Jake was exhausted, but he immediately began preparing a place for Dr. Keth to rest comfortably. He put soft blankets on the floor near the fireplace and helped move the injured Villani from the stretcher. "Your leg needs proper medical attention," Jake said, examining the break. "I can set the bone and make a splint, but you really need advance medical care. Can you contact our ship?" Dr. Keth asked. Zara looked sad. "Our communication equipment was in the shuttle. It was destroyed in the crash." Jake went to a cabinet and pulled out a small device. "This is an emergency communicator. It can reach the human colony, and they have equipment that can contact other species." Dr. Keth looked surprised. "You will contact your people to help us?" "Of course," Jake said. "They can arrange for a Villani ship to come pick you up." While Jake worked on setting up the communicator, Dr. Keth talked quietly with Zara in their own language. Jake couldn't understand what they were saying, but he could tell that Dr. Keth was asking many questions, and Zara was explaining what had happened to her. "Zara tells me that you saved her life and took care of her injuries," Dr. Keth said to Jake. "She says you were kind to her from the beginning." "I did what anyone should do," Jake said, adjusting the communicator's antenna. "But the stories we have heard about humans, Dr. Keth began, are wrong," Jake said firmly. "Most humans are good people who care about others. We have problems and conflicts sometimes, just like any species, but we're not monsters." Dr. Keth watched Jake work on the communicator. "If that's true, then why do so many species fear humans?" Jake sighed. "I don't know. Maybe there were misunderstandings, or maybe someone has been spreading lies about us. But I hope that meeting us will help change those ideas." The communicator crackled to life, and Jake was able to contact the human colony. He explained the situation to the colony's communication officer and asked them to send a message to the Villani homeworld. "They'll contact your people," Jake told Dr. Keth. "A rescue ship should be here in a few days." Dr. Keth looked at Jake with new respect. "Thank you, Jake. You have shown me that everything I believed about humans was wrong. Maybe you can help." "Other Villani understand the truth too," Jake said. "I will try," Dr. Keth promised, "but it will not be easy. Fear is hard to overcome." That night, as they sat around the fire sharing a simple meal, Dr. Keth began to see Jake not as a monster from the stories, but as a good person who had risked his life to help strangers. It was the beginning of a new understanding between their species. Jake and Zara left the cabin early in the morning when the mist was still thick between the trees. Jake carried a large backpack filled with supplies, water, and his medical kit. Zara walked beside him, moving much better now that her wounds had healed. She pointed the way toward where she thought the shuttle had crashed. "We need to be very careful," Jake said as they walked along a narrow animal path. "This part of the forest has many dangerous creatures." Zara nodded. "I learned that the hard way. What kind of animals should we watch out for?" Jake pointed to some deep scratches on a tree trunk. "Those are from shadow cats. They're about the size of a big dog, but they have 6 legs and very sharp claws. They usually hunt at night, but sometimes they come out during the day." "What else?" Zara asked, looking around nervously. "Rock lizards," Jake said. "They look like stones until you get close, then they attack. And there are swamp bears near the river. They're huge and very aggressive." As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees became taller and thicker. Strange vines hung down from the branches, and colorful flowers bloomed everywhere. Some of the plants glowed with soft light, and others moved when Jake and Zara walked past them. "This place is beautiful," Zara said, looking around with wonder, "but also very alien." Jake smiled. "I felt the same way when I first came here. It takes time to get used to a new world." They had been walking for about 2 hours when Jake suddenly stopped and held up his hand. "Do you hear that?" Zara listened carefully. There was a low growling sound coming from somewhere ahead of them. "What is it?" "Swamp bear," Jake whispered. "We need to go around it." Jake led Zara off the path and through thick bush. They moved very quietly, trying not to make any sound. Through the leaves, they could see a huge creature about the size of a small car. It had dark brown fur and a massive head with sharp teeth. It was eating something near a stream. "It's so big," Zara whispered. Jake nodded. "They can weigh as much. As 3 humans, their claws are longer than my fingers." They carefully moved around the bear, staying downwind so it wouldn't smell them. It took them an extra hour to get back to their original path, but they made it safely. "How did you learn to do that?" Zara asked as they continued walking. "Experience," Jake said. "When you live in the wilderness, you learn to read the signs and avoid trouble. Fighting should always be the last choice." "But what if you can't avoid it?" Zara asked. Jake patted the knife on his belt. "Then you do what you have to do to survive. But I've only had to fight an animal a few times in 3 years." They walked for several more hours, stopping occasionally to rest and drink water. The forest around them kept changing as they moved through different areas. Sometimes they walked through dark areas where tall trees blocked the sunlight. Other times they crossed open meadows filled with colorful flowers. Around midday, they reached the edge of a deep valley. A river ran through the bottom of it, and red flowering trees grew on both sides. Tall rock formations rose up like walls on either side of the valley. "This is it," Zara said excitedly. "This is where we were when the shuttle crashed." Jake looked down into the valley. It was a long way down, and the sides were very steep. "Do you remember which side of the valley the shuttle crashed on?" Zara pointed to the left side. "Over there, I think." There was a flat area between the rocks where the shuttle tried to land. Jake studied the valley carefully. "I can see a path that leads down. It looks dangerous, But we can make it if we're careful. They started down the steep path. Jake went first, testing each step to make sure it was safe. Zara followed close behind him, holding on the rocks and tree roots to keep her balance. Several times, loose stones rolled down the slope, making loud noises that echoed through the valley. "Try to step where I step," Jake said. "Some of these rocks are loose." About halfway down, they had to climb around a large boulder that blocked the path. Jake went first, finding handholds in the rock face. He helped Zara climb around the boulder, making sure she didn't fall. "Are you okay?" he asked when they were both safely on the other side. "Yes, but my legs are shaking," Zara said. "I'm not used to this kind of climbing." "You're doing great," Jake said. "We're almost at the bottom." When they finally reached the valley floor, they both sat down to rest. The river was shallow and clear, and they could hear it bubbling over the rocks. The red flowering trees filled the air with a sweet smell. "Now we need to find the crash site," Jake said. "Do you remember which direction you came from when you were running?" Zara looked around, trying to remember. "I think I came from that direction," she said, pointing upstream. "But I was so scared and confused that I might be wrong." Jake stood up and started walking along the river bank. "We'll search systematically. We'll walk upstream for a while, then if we don't find anything, we'll try downstream." They walked for about an hour, looking carefully for any signs of the crashed shuttle. Jake showed Zara how to look for broken branches, disturbed ground, and other signs that something large had crashed nearby. "There," Zara said suddenly, pointing to a grove of trees. "I see something metallic." Jake looked where she was pointing. Through the trees, he could see pieces of twisted metal reflecting the sunlight. That must be it. They hurried toward the crash site. The shuttle had hit several trees before coming to rest in a small clearing. It was badly damaged, with pieces of metal scattered all around. The front of the shuttle was completely crushed, but the back part was still mostly intact. "Can anyone be alive in that?" Jake asked. Zara ran to the shuttle and started looking for a way inside. "The emergency exit is back here," she said. "Help me move this piece of metal." Jake helped her move debris away from the rear of the shuttle. They found a door that was bent but still functional. Jake pulled it open with a loud creaking sound. "Hello?" Zara called into the shuttle. "Is anyone there?" They heard a weak voice answer from inside. "Zara, is that you? Dr. Keth," Zara said. Happily, "You're alive." Zara crawled into the shuttle, and Jake followed her. Inside, they found an older Villani man lying on what was left of a bunk. He had gray hair and was wearing a torn research uniform. His leg was clearly broken, and he had cuts on his face and hands. "Dr. Keth, this is Jake," Zara said. "He's a human, but he's been helping me." Dr. Keth looked at Jake with fear and confusion. "A human? Zara, what are you doing?" "It's okay," Zara said quickly. "Jake is not like the stories. He saved my life and helped me find you." Dr. Keth tried to sit up, but he was too weak. "But humans are dangerous. They eat other people." Jake knelt down beside the injured alien. "That's not true, Dr. Keth. I'm here to help you, not hurt you." Dr. Keth looked at Jake carefully. He was obviously scared, but he was also badly hurt and needed help. "What happened to the others?" he asked Zara. Zara's expression became sad. "I don't know. After the crash, I was thrown out of the shuttle. I've been lost in the forest for days." Jake looked around the shuttle. "We need to search for the other crew members. They might be injured and unable to call for help." Dr. Keth pointed toward the front of the shuttle. "Captain Vex and Engineer Talo were in the front section when we crashed. I haven't heard from them since." Jake carefully made his way to the front of the shuttle. The damage was much worse there, with metal twisted and broken everywhere. He found the two other crew members, but they had not survived the crash. Jake came back to where Zara and Dr. Keth were waiting. His expression told them the bad news without him having to say anything. "I'm sorry," Jake said quietly. "They didn't make it." Zara began to cry. Dr. Kef closed his eyes and was quiet for a long moment. "We need to get you out of here," Jake said to Dr. Kef. "Your leg is broken, and you need medical attention." "But I can't walk," Dr. Kef said. Jake looked at the injured alien. "I'll carry you. We need to get you somewhere safe." Dr. Kef looked shocked. "You would do that for me?" "Of course," Jake said. "You're hurt, and I can help you. That's what matters." Jake spent the next hour making a stretcher from pieces of the shuttle and some rope from his pack. He carefully moved Dr. Kef onto the stretcher, trying not to hurt his broken leg. "This is going to be a difficult trip," Jake said. "But we'll take it slow and get you to safety." As they prepared to leave the crash site, Dr. Kef looked at Jake with new understanding. "Maybe the stories about humans are wrong," he said quietly. "Maybe they are," Jake replied. "But right now, let's focus on getting you home." Zara helped Jake carry the stretcher as they began the long journey back to his cabin. The rescue mission was only the beginning of what they hoped would be a new understanding between their species.